What about those quiet hobbies that you want to do for yourself? What about going to the gym like you said that you would? Or what about starting that business that you keep thinking about?
Okay, let's go.
We're so caught up with how other people are performing in our lives and making sure that we do the humanly thing and show up for others. Especially if you're a people pleaser, you're constantly there for others, always showing up. And then sometimes you wonder why no one ever shows up for you. Or even if they occasionally do, it's still not consistent, is it? Because you can't control everyone at the end of the day. But we never take time to sit down and address ourselves when we let ourselves down. Because you always get anxiety about letting someone else down, about plans that you've made and agreed to, and then you end up not showing up. But when you've made plans to yourself or plans with yourself, promises to yourself, you don't get anxiety about letting yourself down. You don't wonder over it or ruminate over it and say, oh, I've broken that promise to myself. That's a form of letting yourself down that we don't sit with, that we don't put at the surface of our thinking. We don't give it the level of intention that it deserves because we're so concerned with other people and keeping our image in other people's minds crystal clean. But what about your image in your mind? What about your self-concept and the things that you think about yourself? Because at the end of the day, you're a combination of the things that you do and the things that you say and what you actually act on. When someone asks you to describe yourself, what do you say? Probably tell them what you do. And that's probably your job. But outside of that, what else do you do? I feel like these days not a lot of people have hobbies. And most of the hobbies involve someone else. What about those quiet hobbies that you want to do for yourself? What about going to the gym like you said that you would? Or what about starting that business that you keep thinking about? By not showing up for those simple things that you said, I'm going to do this. Don't you think you're letting yourself down a little bit there? And we all do it. But if we're constantly letting ourselves down, why do we expect other people to not do the same? I'm not saying that you deserve it if you're constantly letting yourself down, but isn't it about time that we start taking responsibility to ourselves and showing up when we say, I'm going to do this? That's a promise you're breaking to yourself there. And you're a person, and you're not being a very good friend to yourself. Part of self-love is showing up for yourself. When you need rest, you should rest. When you need exercise, you should exercise. And when you need to express, you should express. And sometimes you get depressed because you're not listening to yourself. You're dragged every which way that life is taking you, and you know much is going on. But maybe give yourself a minute. Give yourself a week to actually follow through with the things that you've promised yourself. I'm going to go to the gym consistently this year. That's what all those New Year resolutions are about. A bunch of promises you make to yourself every year that you never do. And next year is the same list again because you failed to yourself again this year. And again, I'm not bashing you. Everyone does it. But part of learning to trust yourself is actually following through with those small actions. Start small. Start with something small. I'm going to eat some sort of greens with my food every single day. That's something you need to do every day. So just ensure that you actually follow through with having slow greens on the side of your plate. And then once you're consistent with that, move on to the other harder things. Because once you do that for yourself, the kind of self-love you build is one that's unshakable. Once you start loving yourself, the way you can show up for others massively increases. Because we're so concerned about being there for others to upkeep this reputation. But the problem with that is that that's a constant outflow. So if you think of yourself as a cup that's pouring into others, what are you going to be left with at the end of the day? Nothing. And then you wonder why you're upset or depressed or disappointed. I'm not saying that it's bad to pour into others. And I'm not saying to be selfish either. But I'm saying before you start pouring into others, make sure that your cup is full first. And once you have an overflow, then you have more than enough to give others and still enough for yourself. Because it's actually not as selfless as you think to pour from an empty cup. Unless you have a duty to a person, like you're a parent or something. But even in that sense too, your priority should be filling your cup so that you have enough to fill the cups of those who depend on you. So today I'm inviting you to try very hard to show up for yourself. Because that's a form of self-love that we ignore. You say you love yourself, but yet you still don't follow through with the promises you make to yourself. Imagine if someone who loves you said that they'd go somewhere with you, and then they never show up and never say anything about it. Maybe feel bad a little bit, but they've already moved on with their day. That's the kind of thing we do day on, whenever we don't follow through with what we've promised ourselves. Because you know who your highest being is. You know who you're supposed to be. And you know exactly the steps that you need to take to get there. And might not be glamorous, all of them. Might not be easy either. But just one small step. Every single day. Just a little try. That's what you need to do. That's a form of loving yourself into your highest form. Loving yourself into your next version.